How in the world does Nikki Haley think that she can stay in this race? She's going to tell you that she has punched her ticket. No, wait, that was Ron DeSantis who told you that he had punched his ticket. Now I have Nikki Haley saying that, my gosh, as a matter of fact, I'm so popular in this two-person race that if Donald Trump isn't going to debate me, well, then there's no debate.
You said this morning there have been 5 debates in the Republican primary so far, and the next one you do will either be against Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Just to put a finer point on it, you're not going to do a debate here in New Hampshire unless Donald Trump is on the stage.
I mean, that's who I'm running against. That's who I want. That's, at the end of the day, he's the front runner. He's the one that I'm 7 points away from. He's the one that we're fighting for. There is nobody else I need to debate. I have had 5 strong debates and have done plenty of them. He can't hide forever. At some point, he's got to get on a debate.
Have you told ABC put out a statement saying that they want you to tell them officially by 5 o'clock today? Have you already done that?
They are very aware that I've said, is Donald Trump going to be on that stage? They don't need to be asking me. They need to be asking him. Mm-hmm. If he's on that stage, I'm there.
Yeah, he's not there. I forgot if I said hello. Tony Katz, good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Is there a Hail Mary play, though? I know people have been writing about it. People have been talking about it. And I don't mind that they do. And while some people are convinced that the argument is Ron DeSantis has to get out of this race, and that way he can save himself for the future, I don't think that's it. I actually think that they don't lose anything by sticking around for as long as they can. But what do they expect to happen by their sticking around for as long as they can? You have to hope beyond hope, beyond hope, beyond all measure of reasonableness and rationality that Donald Trump quite literally craps the bed, literally pulls a Gerald Nadler at a press conference. You have to hope that Donald Trump pulls a Dick Morris and some guy in his underwear comes walking through the shot. That happened on Newsmax, and I'm sorry. It's still it's still unbelievable to me. It happened. It happened. We must have the video up at TonyKatz.com. I'll double check. We got Sarah, put the video up at TonyKatz.com of Dick Morris. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I have in my home where I have the studio, I have the red light. Like literally lights up upstairs so the family knows I'm on the air. He doesn't lock a door. Anyway. The things that have to work out for Haley or DeSantis are massive. They're massive. But I don't actually believe that getting out of the race is necessarily the thing they have to do. One of the arguments that they're making, Ron DeSantis trying to make this argument at a town hall on CNN, is that half the GOP made a different decision.
Well, look, I think that he was the former president of the United States. He's one of the most famous people that's ever been involved in American politics. And there's obviously a lot of Republicans that appreciated his policies, but you still had roughly half of the Iowa caucus goers that made another choice. And so that tells me that there is an appetite for a different leader. And I think what I represent is somebody that has delivered on those key conservative policies that we've all been wanting to see in Washington, D.C. In Florida, think about what we've done with our taxes.
With all due respect, I like the Florida resume, and I've been clear. I'm a DeSantis guy. I would rather have DeSantis. I think I get what I want and less baggage. It's easier to get over the hump in November. But that's not the way you sell it, sir. That's not the way you sell it. That's not the way you sell it. You sold it as if you were some engaged college professor giving a thesis about how someone, what it is that the Iowa caucus has meant to you. No. It's not well, it's not maybe, and I think no. You have to now engage a level of authority. You are in the great game now. This is Game of Thrones. Are you coming with dragons, or are you going to end up a White Walker? And let's assume that Arya didn't have that little hand skill thing. You don't engage in any level of uncertainty. You start with, What we learned from Iowa is that half the Republican Party isn't interested in Donald Trump. And we have to make sure that they know they have an alternative that will get them what they want. Policy prescriptions that make their lives better. And America, that remains fantastic and stays away from this progressive nonsense. I am that guy, clearly. That's the delivery that he should have given. And it kills me that he missed it, because he should not have missed it by any stretch. When Haley said that she's, there are two people in this race, of course she has the argument because she polls very well in New Hampshire and South Carolina is her state. She does not have to get out till Super Tuesday. As a matter of fact, she has got a ramp that gets her to Super Tuesday. Ron DeSantis does not have that. Ron DeSantis has to play second in New Hampshire when he has been he was behind Ramaswamy, he was behind Chris Christie. I think he may have been behind Asa Hutchinson. I don't know if they're still voting for Bob Dole there. He was super behind on every level. Where in the world does he think that this is going to come from? Meanwhile, Trump is picking up the endorsements left and right. Members of Congress, senators, you've got governors doing it, and then Vivek Ramaswamy heads out to New Hampshire to show the love.
You know this man. You know why we're here, patriots across the state. We are in the middle of a war in this country. That's what this is. It's not a war between black and white. It's not between Democrat and Republican, even in a deeper sense. It's between the permanent state and the everyday citizen. Between those of us who love the United States of America and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. And right now we need a commander-in-chief who will lead us to victory in this war. That's what we need in this country. You got to know you're in a war to win one. You can't win one if you're asleep at the switch, have your head stuck in the sand like most Republicans. And I think that's going to require somebody who isn't bought and paid for, a businessman, not a politician. Anybody heard of that? And that's why I was in this race. But I'll tell you, the people of Iowa spoke loud and clear last night, and I'm a big believer that we, the people, create a government that is accountable to us, not the other way around. That we, the people, choose who leads this country. And so we heard we, the people, last night, and that is why last evening I met my friend here. We met in person, and I told him that I would endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States and do everything in my power to lead us to victory in this war. It is a 1776 moment right now.
You got to admit, man, he's good at it. He is. Vivek is good at it. And he's going to be very, very good on the trail. And he's going to enjoy beating the living snot out of Nikki Haley. The people who think that Haley and DeSantis should remain, they're not crazy. What they are is outrageously hopeful. Delusionally hopeful. I could, at this moment, break down some specific paths, some ideas that could show that, yes, there's an opportunity here and an opportunity there. There are very few opportunities. Everything would have to go right for a Haley or a DeSantis, and everything would have to go wrong for a President Trump. But let's say they're not thinking of, hey, we're gonna have this done before Super Tuesday. It's just going to be a war of attrition, and people will realize that they have options. Let's say that either one of them believes that if we just stay in this till the convention and the indictments start turning into convictions, then, we're going to get them at the convention, and that'll be the ball game. To the extent that there are crazier ideas, there are crazier ideas. That concept is actually the most not mind-numbing, not insane. You could see that that there is a if I stick around and if I stick around and if I stick around, maybe I can win some level of attrition game with that near 50% that didn't want him in Iowa, which doesn't necessarily mean it's representative of where the full party is. Because if you take that 49%, it's not all I'm not voting for Trump. Some are not voting for Trump. The others can be like, okay, Trump's gonna be the nominee. And they're gonna check it off, they're gonna vote for Trump, and that's it. So that for that 51% that he got becomes a 72%. No one is taking that into account. But let's say that this is the philosophy. Right? We're not debating whether or not it's crazy. This is the philosophy. It's the least crazy of the philosophies. How are you going to afford it? How are you going to afford this? What's your plan to maintain this? You mean you're just going to stay on the ballot and you're not going to campaign? You're not going to travel to these states? You're not going to have advance? You're not going to have a town hall? You're not going to feed people some donuts and tell them why over breakfast you're the guy? That's not going to happen? How are you going to pay for your staff? How does this work? Give me the plan for the staying power. I'll say it again. I would rather DeSantis over Trump. I think he's easier. It's easier for us to win a general election with him. Tell me how it works. Show me the methodology, for the love of the Lord. Show me the methodology. It's not there. There's no money that shows that it gets there. Find me the person. Find me the donor who's like, what? Blow $50 million? Hell yeah! Where's my checkbook? Well, I got a pen right here. I don't know where that is. So yes. They're staying in, are DeSantis and Haley. And maybe through South Carolina, all right, I can somewhat see it. It's too early to get out now. But do they think they're sticking around for the long run? Because that's just crazy town. Crazy town. Keep it here. I'm Tony Katz. So let me tell you guys, I had a small tech glitch when we started, so I apologize for being a bit late. Welcome to the show. Good to be with you. Got a lot to get to. In the meantime, let me share this with you, and I'll be back in a few moments. This conversation, you've had it in your own life, and we've had it in multiple places where we see that the agency class in the United States is not actually focused on what it is the agency is supposed to be doing. Rather, they're focused on everything else. If the CDC can then tell us that, well, guns are a threat to national security and safety, and so we have to do something about guns via the Centers for Disease Control, you realize that they believe they can do anything. And what we've created in the United States is this completely unaccountable group, this fourth branch of government, the agency class, that isn't responsible to us, that isn't accountable to us. They have a budget that is near unlimited. They say something, it has the full effect of law. It is a complete bypassing of Congress. Now, in a standard world, in a normal world, in a thinking world, what you would have is rules and regulations, thoughts and philosophies that actually make things better. But if, as Glenn points out in this piece that you can find over there at the New York Post, if we're engaged in mission creep, how does one focus on what the mission is? And if we're talking about the very critical things about safety and security, but instead the FBI wants to go about surveilling Trump supporters for 2024, or as Glenn points out, going after churches, then how could you possibly keep an eye on the person who wants to set the church on fire? We hear about this in the most immediate way Of what value is the terror watch list when we see somebody commit an act of terrorism who was on the terror watch list? And the answer is there is no purpose to it. Who watches the watch list and what happens to these people when something happens? No FBI member gets fired. No one on this organization gets fired, or in this agency gets fired. No one ever loses their job for it. No one ever suffers the consequences of their failure. But somehow we're supposed to be rest assured or feel secure because a watch list exists. We can only feel secure if the job is done. How Israel didn't do their job is beyond understanding. And if it's this idea of Mossad focused on these judicial reforms as opposed to the enemy, that's a whole nother conversation. Was Israel complacent? We've got a fence and we've got an Iron Dome. We're fine. No, the enemy doesn't think that. You get lulled into it. The enemy still hates you. This is a huge warning for the United States, and we should be very focused on it. Sorry, I was muted. See, I told you we're still learning. Learning our way through everything. Oh, good Lord. Now you see, now we're good. Now we're back, right? The audio's working just fine. Everything's perfect. Just making sure. Good Lord. So we have got retail sales that are up. Retail sales up 0.6%. Newsmax Money with the story on strong holiday sales season. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find it all, TonyKatz.com. It's very strange because the consumer price index tells us that inflation's at 3.9%. That the trend down that we may have seen and we wanted to see, because who really wants inflation? If you want inflation for political reasons because it'll help you beat Joe Biden, I think that's super weird. Inflation sucks, and it's a tax, and it's abusive, and you want it gone. And the Federal Reserve has been doing everything possible by raising interest rates to try and get this to happen. But spending still occurs in all these places. And it's been better because you've had a totally, not only intransigent Congress, but a dysfunctional Congress. They haven't passed much legislation. You don't have much spending of money. But yet we see with the worldwide recession going on, you have recession in China, you have clearly a recession in China. And I'll get some numbers about China that you simply cannot trust. You have recession in Europe. These things do have an effect. Of course they do. So inflation up in the United States, I almost understand. This is crazy that retail sales were up 0.6. Now, yes, holiday season. I get that. But when we were discussing it here, we saw this as going down. We took a look at where the spending was. It was like, where are people spending? They're not going to buy for the holidays. Where is this money coming from? There's a whole feeling of just dread out there. They spent like nuts. Stores selling general merchandise, they were up 1.3. Clothing and accessories up 1.5. Online 1.5. Furniture and home furnishings had a 1% decline. That one makes sense because a lot of people did their furniture and home stuff during COVID. That's where they spent their money and when they spent their money, and they had no reason to go out there and change it again. It just didn't make a sense for them to do so. But I think you see this 0.6, and you still realize that the inflation is 3.9%. Sometimes these numbers don't jive. They don't make any sense at all. It is super frustrating. Joe Biden's team will never talk about this number. They'll only talk about, look how many jobs we've created. And you know they've never created a job. You understand that that is a lie from beginning to end. We're not talking about, well, it's how you want to look at the numbers. People going back to work in a post-COVID world is not the creation of jobs. And anybody who says otherwise is a liar and a fraud. And that could very well include Paul Krugman, who has told you this economy is great. Joe Biden's the best. Tell me now, this economy great? I have got business owners who are very, very worried about the doom that's coming. They don't like what they see for 2024. Now, that's anecdotal. But there are conversations that we've discussed before about doom spending. It's all going to go to hell anyway. I might as well have a new pair of shoes. Everything's going to fall apart anyway. I might as well have a new TV. The world is heading for a complete and total disaster. Who cares about my credit card debt? And buying things makes me feel good. And I need something to make me feel good because everything is so terrible. Doom spending. When I first read that, this was back in October, it struck me. It really did. It absolutely struck me. I was like, that's a crazy thought. And I don't think there's a day that's gone by, including when I've been on vacation, that I haven't thought about it since. Because I think that's onto something. Onto something pretty horrible. Doom spending. This is Tony Katz today. Oh, my people. Good to be back. We're back with the radio show in just a moment there. Find everything going on at TonyKatz.com. This about the Houthi rebels and putting them back on the terror list. I think that this is the hit to Joe Biden. And I'll explain that in just a moment. You know that meme that exists, you know, how it started, how it's going. So it started with Joe Biden saying that the Houthi rebels should not be on any level of list of terrorists or on a list of terrorist organizations. And it ends with Joe Biden putting the Houthi rebels back on a list of terrorist organizations. Joe Biden is always wrong. Always. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. If you're listening on radio, 833-GOT-TONY, 833-468-8669. If you're watching the live stream, my gosh, leave your comments. I'm happy to get to it. The placement as a specially designated global terrorist group, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, reverses a decision that Biden made to remove the Houthis over concerns that hurt prospects for peace talks and further crippled the economy of an impoverished nation. Yemen, of course, is just torn asunder. Yemen is torn asunder because of a proxy war that's happening. There, a civil war, if you will, a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. This has been going on for a while. But that's not the story. The story is this push continual from the Biden administration to say we're going to achieve peace. The Houthi rebels are backed by Iran. So once again, it is an appeasement of Iran by the Obama administration. I'm sorry, I mean the Biden administration. No, wait, I got it right the first time. The same people, the same failed pseudo-academics, the very same Iran Ayatollah lovers are right there trying to make the same deals that not only didn't work the first time around, but allowed Iran to get closer and closer to a nuclear weapon. The Iran nuclear deal never, ever, ever stopped nor slowed Iran. These are the facts. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they manipulate. Of course, they were working to enrich uranium outside of the confines of this deal called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Of course they were. And if it wasn't for Israel bombing some sites every now and again and sending a little Stuxnet virus out there, who knows where the Iranians would be at this moment. The Biden administration was as wrong can be. Why were they looking to have peace talks? What is it about this administration and the belief that they can bring about peace? This is not a question of whether or not we want peace. I'm going to answer the question for all of us. The answer is yes. The vast majority of us are not warmongers by any stretch of the imagination. You know what we want to do? We want to have a steak. We want to sip some bourbon. We want to smoke a cigar. We want to get a little sex, and then we want to nap. This is what we want. And sometimes not even in that order. I am not here to judge it by any stretch of the imagination. In the main, what we want is to be able to live our lives the way we see fit. This is what we want. This is what we desire. This is what we're looking for. We're not looking to try and get other people to live our lives, live their lives the way we see fit for them. That's very much a progressive thing. You want to talk about being an authoritarian. Can I just go a quick side thing? This was Rachel Maddow on the night of the Iowa caucus talking about the authoritarian Republicans?
Again, the big picture takeaway from that, and I don't mean to be, again, too dark, as you said, on this, but it is not, if we are worried about the rise of authoritarianism in this country, we are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. If we're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government, the leader who is trying to do that is part of that equation. But people wanting that is a much bigger part of that equation. Right. And the American electorate is made up of two major parties. One of those parties has been flirting with extremism on the ultra-right for a very long time. They've brought them in a way that they haven't been central to Republican electoral politics ever before, and I know because I've been studying this. But once you have radicalized one major party so that those are the preferences of the people who adhere to your party, the leader's interchangeable. And yes, Trumpism is sometimes what we call it. MAGA movement is probably a better way to do it. But there is an authoritarian movement inside Republican politics that isn't being bamboozled by Trump. They are pushing Trump to get more and more extreme because
You're the people who told us you can't have gas stoves. Then you can't have gas furnaces. You're the people who told us we have to have electric cars. And the state of California said you can't sell any new car except electric cars by, 2035? You're the people who told us that we had to wear a mask. And if we don't wear a mask, well, then we're killing grandma. And if we question the science of wearing masks, then we are destroying democracy. And you dare claim that it's the Republicans who are pushing an authoritarian streak? Do you ever hear yourself? And the answer is yes, of course they hear themselves. But so much of what happens is this is what we believe, but we can't show people we believe, so we'll push it on the other person. That projection that takes place. The idea that it is Republicans pushing the idea of authoritarianism is nonsense. The vast majority of conservatives I know, yes, Tony, you're talking anecdotally, I agree. They want to be left alone. They want the cigar, the steak, the bourbon, and the sex. That's what they want. They want to be left alone. They want to be left to their own devices. They don't think about you at all, Rachel Maddow. They don't think about your bigot racist friend Joy Reid either. The vast majority of Americans don't give two craps. But it certainly doesn't help when you push an idea constantly, continually, without any data, without any facts that look at these authoritarians when clearly one can see if it's not enough to be okay with a same-sex marriage, you have to celebrate it. Well, I don't want to celebrate it. Well, then you have to be thrown in jail. Remember, you have to decorate the cake. I don't want to decorate the cake, but I'll sell you the cake. If you don't decorate the cake, you go to jail. There was a story out the other day. The owners of a venue were approached by a same-sex couple, two women, to have, I think it was their wedding there. That's what they called it, having the wedding there. And they wrote them a letter. The owners wrote a letter, said, look, we're open to everyone. We'll gladly do it. But just so you know, we won't be celebrating with you. This is not what we believe in. We want you to know that about the place we are. We are open to you. We will take care of you. We're just not celebrating this. And the couple went crazy. How dare they ruin our perfect event? The owners of the establishment were honest, upfront, and clear with you and still opened their place to you and said, go ahead. It wasn't enough. Now you have to celebrate with us and you have to be the biggest cheerleader. Who's the authoritarian here? You have to design the cake or decorate the cake, or else you have to design the website, or else you have to let a boy claim they're a girl and use the bathroom, or else. Who's the authoritarian here? I often quote Evan Sayet in this moment when talking about the political left and how they are 180 degrees diametrically opposed to the truth. They are not just wrong, as Evan Sayet explains. They are as wrong can be. That is absolutely true. Joe Biden was as wrong can be when it comes to the Houthi rebels. As wrong can be. The deal, right, and there's a lot going on. This decision, this reversal, should be a great warning sign to all of us at how bad Joe Biden's instincts really are. You know, the line that Joe Biden has never gotten has gotten every foreign policy decision wrong in the last 30 years, every single one. But this is clearly a page out of Barack Obama's playbook, and this desire to somehow think you can bring Iran in. It is to this that I think that whoever the nominee is, whether it be Donald Trump or somehow one of the others, I think I said it clearly right there. This is a really important thing to note. The hubris of the political left that they believe that somehow through some magical, mystical kindness, they can get everybody to come to heel. Do you actually believe that you could create a peace with Hamas? To believe that, you would have to, at first, do a tremendous amount of drugs. But we'll talk about Hunter Biden later. Then you would have to suspend all reality and all belief. You would have to live in a fantasy where somehow your hashtag and your deep feelings create results. We live in reality, and in reality, Hamas wants every Jew dead and every American dead. And in reality, the Houthi rebels want the same things. You can't achieve peace with them. It's not that I don't want to, because if I do, I'm not bothered, and I can get back to the steak and the bourbon and the cigar and the sex and the nap. And not necessarily in that order. Warmongering is not on my list. And I would argue for the vast majority of Americans who are rational folk, it's not on their list. There are more people who have things on the list I just mentioned than have warmongering on a list. But the rational people understand that sometimes to get to your list, you got to take care of the work. And the work involves absolutely destroying the Houthis and absolutely destroying Hamas. And ignoring the Houthi rebels and thinking that you could deal with them, reason with them, was an irrational position from the start. Anybody with a mind would have told you this. Anybody within a military complex with a mind would have told you this. The Biden people didn't know. How many more times can Joe Biden be wrong and it won't cost us? We know he's wrong on the southern border. Don't forget that when they did they called it entrance polling for the caucuses. When they did the entrance polling, it wasn't the economy that was the top subject for the Iowa caucuses. That was the second one at 35%. 40% of people, their top subject, immigration. Now, the left will go for the spin of, you see, they have a problem with brown people. The left is dopey. We have a problem with lawlessness. And you know who else has a problem with lawlessness? Brown people and black people. Because they all don't think alike. But according to Joy Reid, the bigot of MSNBC, never mind the whole cast over there and at CNN, they are so despicable and so think so low of people who are black or brown or Asian or Hispanic. They think they do all think in a monolithic block. All these people are Pauline Kael. They think everybody around them is the totality of people. If you don't know the Pauline Kael story, and there's a lot of evidence these days that maybe it didn't happen this way, but the story is there, so I keep it. A socialite in New York in the 70s, and she when Richard Nixon was reelected, she said, Nixon? How in the world did Richard Nixon win? I don't know anybody who voted for Nixon. You think Manhattan and people who fancied themselves those who would attend the Algonquin Round Table were the kind of people voting for Nixon? It's this belief that their little world is somehow the world. I believe the world is here, and they own a very small part of it. Very tiny little part. Joe Biden is always wrong. And when Joe Biden is wrong, you have the chance to get hurt. The Houthi rebels are now hitting at Greek ships. They will hit everywhere. The shipping lanes have changed. They start costing more. A container that usually costs $2,400 now costs $10,000 to rent. You will pay more at your local store. Never mind the people who will be kidnapped. Never mind the people who will be killed. Never mind how these groups like Hamas have already been working to get people across the southern border of the United States. How wrong can Joe Biden be on that policy? And we're the ones who are going to get hurt. And in the list of things we want to do, getting hurt isn't one of those things, although I don't necessarily know how you have sex, but I'm not here to judge. My safe word is avocado. Joe Biden is always wrong. And we got to make sure that we're right in November. I'm Tony Katz. Whew. All right. Real quick. Real quick. It's I don't know if I'm going to do watch of the day. I'm going to have to watch sponsorships now available, but I wore the Bulova yesterday, the Accutron, the Space View. So this is another one. This is actually a remake. I got this on eBay, and even though the colors of the band are a little faded, it is. I think they call it the surfboard. So this comes from the 60s, and so I love the orange and blue, and then that in there, right? The look of the surfboard there. I think it's fantastic. So Bulova's got a name and a half in watches, but no one thinks of it as any great shakes of today, right? Your Rolex, your Patek Philippe, you're doing things like Tag Heuer or Omega, and there's some great watches in there. I don't know what it is about some of these kinds of things that just hit me, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking a Submariner. Get me a Daytona Panda. I'd be a very happy man from Rolex. But this is, I don't know. I dig the fun. I dig the fun. And I don't know why it is that Bulova has so many pieces where I'm like, that's cool. It is so weird. It's like Eli Manning used to do the ads for Citizen Watch. And I'm sure people would be like, good Lord, Citizen Watch, who wears that? Lord only knows how much Eli Manning got paid from his time at the Giants being their spokesperson. But Citizen also makes some cool pieces. Like I will wear sometime next week the Blue Angels watch. It's great. It's great. It's under $300, and it's fantastic. It goes with everything. Every time I wear that watch, someone's like, hey, what's that? A lot of cool pieces. You do not have to spend. You do not have to spend crazy money to get a good watch. You don't. But I will say this. I am not an Apple Watch guy for exactly this reason, Irish. It's not about which one that you love, and certainly budget and lifestyle I get. A watch should tell a story. And I don't think you can wear an Apple Watch. I'm not going to tell you not to. Who the hell am I? I just think it doesn't tell a story. It doesn't give the personality. It doesn't. The watch is a work of art. By the way, the Submariner is made by Rolex. The Submariner is Rolex right there. Your watch should tell a story. It really should. And by the way, if you want to talk about on the Casio side, the G-Shock, I see people wearing that all over the place. I have a couple of Mudmasters, which I'll wear. That thing is gigantic. Gigantic. And on the Seiko, if you could afford a Grand Seiko, good on you. The Grand Seikos are brilliant timepieces, but they'll run you $4, $5, $6 Oh, for sure. Some of the Seiko 5s and others you can find in, a few $100 to $1,000. And nice. But the G-Shocks, they're a lot of fun. A lot of play right there. Let's get back to it, shall we? Hunter Biden and his cocaine. I can't make up the story, so I don't know why you're upset with me. Hunter Biden, where prosecutors are claiming that the gun pouch, right, where he kept his gun, there's a brown leather pouch, and in that pouch there was cocaine. Yeah. Well, who questions this? Who would even think of doubting such a thing? It's Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden has been doing drugs for a good long time. Why would anybody think somehow things are different? And his team is like, we should dismiss the charges. And the prosecutors are like, we have got so much evidence. We want to move forward. Hunter Biden is a drug addict, but Hunter Biden has committed the crime. At this point, it's obvious. This is Tony Katz today. All right, guys. So what we've got is a radio break right now that runs till about 1:05. That's where it runs to. We're talking about it in real time, 5 minutes after the hour in the radio parlance. So we will play a couple things for you, and then we will be back. So kick back, relax, try not to drink too much, and we'll catch you in a bit. What is the strategy to beat President Biden in a primary, considering that the Democratic Party has stated that no debates? We heard this from Simone Sanders on MSNBC not too long ago. No debates, so no chance for you to engage in this conversation. So what do you think the move point, the pivot point is for Democrats?
Well, what are you asking? Are you asking what is my kind of path to victory?
Correct.
Well, I think that it's unfortunate that the president is not going to debate. I think this is a time in our nation's history when so many people are feeling like the system is rigged against them and the electoral system is also rigged. And the Democratic Party ought to be at the spear tip of convincing Americans that, of creating an election that's a template for democracy, where there's retail politics, real debate. And that we're not like the Soviet Union, where the party picks the candidates. But I still think that there are ways around that. I mean, I've spent many years, almost 18 years, being censored by the mainstream media, and particularly the last 3 years of blanket sort of wall-to-wall censorship. But we figured out ways around that. We've figured out ways to communicate with people that are not dependent on the mainstream media. And some of that is, when my uncle ran Tony in 1960, television was a new invention. And he understood that it was going to decide the presidential elections, and he took advantage of that. And I think in 2016, Twitter served kind of the same, played a critical role in that. election. Twitter continues to do that today. And then there's all these podcasts, which I think are an emerging media. Podcasts are really interesting because my kids, I always complain that my kids have these short attention spans because they were raised in the age of iPhones.
Right.
And that anything that doesn't give them this immediate intensity quickly, that they lose attention, lose patience for. My kids, who I have 7 kids who are between 19 years old and 35 years old. And all of them listen to podcasts. They'll sit for 3 hours and listen to, Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan.
But not Tony Katz? They're not listening to Tony Katz?
And yes, of
Savagery.
course, totally Tony Katz.
Savagery.
Just getting to that.
All right, that's very club. That's very club. I don't know about that, producer Jason. I don't think that's gonna stick around. We're still building out. That's all right. But I don't know. I just the decision now is to do it. I wasn't joking, by the way. Sponsorship's now available. You can be on the wall, and then in the new studio, you can have the whole studio sponsorship. We'll name it after you. Only costs $1 billion. All right, maybe less. Maybe less than that. But you can reach out, Tony at TonyKatz.com, and we will We will take care of that for you. We will get you all set up with the good stuff. So a bunch to get to, including this aid deal in Gaza, what's happening and what's going on. And this woman who runs a hospital group or hospitals in India, and what she had to say about lockdowns, not what you're gonna like to hear. Not at all. Not by a long shot. So I've got both of those things to get to, and I will share them with you. And I had what else? No, I'm going to talk where the markets are. The China numbers. That was it. Where do I have the story on the numbers for the Chinese? I had the story. Hold on. Let me see if I've got it. Is it here? There it is. There it is from the Wall Street Journal. And then this we already did. And then that's what's we're about to talk about. So that's good. All right. I got it. Look at me. Got it all together. See, this is exactly why. You need a producer. Right? Need a producer for this part of it. Sarah says she's going to do it. Sarah, who runs all our digital and for Tony Katz and for Eat, Drink, Smoke, she says she's going to do it. I don't know where she's getting the time. I have no idea. So that's why we need the sponsorships, because now we have to pay Sarah even more. She needs more of my money. My TK mug. So the problem is when I ordered these, I never checked, and they're made in China. And so I'm like, I can't order these again. The problem is it's exceptional. It is so this is 6 years old. Everything stays hot. Everything stays cold. It's great. It's terrific. It's made in China. What am I? Yes, I still use it. I didn't throw it out. I'm going to show you. My kids didn't throw out their Nikes either. We just don't buy new Nikes. They want to find a used pair. I don't know if I'm going to have that fight with them. Then again, if I could understand what Jordans go for and all the different versions, I'd be a super happy guy. All right, let's get into some radio, shall we? Sounds good. They've reached a deal for aid in Gaza. The deal allows for medicine to get to Israeli and other hostages held by Hamas. It allows for food for the people of Gaza. I must tell you how little faith I have in this deal. I'm not a pessimist. It's just what in the world would get anybody to think that Hamas can be trusted? Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. And feel free to make the call 833-GOT-TONY, 833-468-8669. And of course, if you're watching the live streams, whether it's Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, gosh, I hate some Facebook, locals, wherever it is, leave a comment. Happy to get to it. This deal came from the French and the Qataris. So France and Qatar. And they're the ones who have been working on this. Supposedly there was some U.S. Attendance, if you will. You know, there's still Americans being held by Hamas. And we're doing this. There are, it's weird how they phrase it. More than 132 hostages are thought to be still held in Gaza. That's the BBC. Well, you don't know who's alive. I don't know if you saw these videos that came out last week that were videos of hostages, and you realize that Hamas is basically taunting Israel. We have your people. We've kept them alive. We'll kill them at any second. And we have Americans being held, and there is no strong action. All there is the radicalness of the political left into these demands for ceasefire. Ceasefire is not the answer. Ceasefire has never been the answer, and ceasefire will not be the answer. If in some way the Israelis wanted to have some kind of cease in order to get some hostages, while I have a tremendous issue with it, I don't get to tell the Israelis what to do. And for the sake of clarity, I'm American, not Israeli, even though I'm Jewish, and I don't get to have a say in Israeli policy. I just think it's a bad policy, just like I think that their COVID policy was just absolutely miserable and dreadful. See, that's how you can discuss Israeli policy without being a Jew-hating bigot. That's how it works. I was saying that mostly for Ilhan Omar's benefit. Well, not that it's going to change anything she believes. But I have no belief whatsoever that this is going to work. Netanyahu putting out a statement, the prime minister, expressing, quote, his appreciation to all those who have assisted in the endeavor. You do what you can. You do what is possible. You hope beyond hope, and then you keep killing the enemy. This part is the part that today's college campus Marxist simply cannot abide. In their world, in their view, in their philosophy, in their theory, there is only one thing to note. Israel is the oppressor, and the people of Gaza are oppressed. So when you engage in this way, they will, of course, push for ceasefire. Israel should just stop doing what it's doing. But they will never once have a conversation about how we got here, which is Hamas's attack on Israelis and others, the murder of 1,200, setting babies on fire, and raping women, and videotaping every bit of it. They wanted the world to see. They didn't try and hide the atrocity, as many people have noted. They wanted you to note the atrocity. They wanted you to see who they are and what it is they do. So now, with an understanding of exactly how twisted this all is, how twisted the political left is in not addressing root causes, and not addressing what it is Hamas did, as Gad Saad calls it. He calls it AOC. And I was like, wait, I think that was taken. Amnesia of causality. The idea that we'd forget what caused the thing. Only thing we do now is talk about how terrible the response is. I haven't forgotten anything. And I certainly haven't forgotten that Hamas can't be trusted. I do not trust that any aid sent to Gaza will actually make it to people who I'm told are starving. I am told that it is a humanitarian catastrophe. That's what Bernie Sanders told me. Bernie Sanders told me that it was a humanitarian catastrophe. He said, not only is it terrible, not only is it awful, not only is it the worst thing you ever saw, that it was worse than Dresden. What, you think I can make this up?
Jake, we've got to,
you
as
think
Americans,
I could
take a very deep
possibly
breath.
make up what this is? I can't. I don't have the skill set to make up a guy saying this is worse than anything World War II had to offer. This was Bernie Sanders. I accidentally hit play just a second ago, and I apologize for that. This was Bernie Sanders talking to Jake Tapper, I believe it is, on CNN discussing it.
Jake, we've got to, as Americans, take a very deep breath. What is going on in Gaza right now is a horrendous humanitarian catastrophe. We're looking at 23,000 people who have been killed, almost 60,000 have been wounded, and 2/3 of the people who have been killed are women and children. You're looking at 70% of the housing units in Gaza that have been destroyed. Jake, if I use the word Dresden, Germany to you, you think about the horrific destruction during World War II of that city. What is going on in Gaza now in 3 months is worse than what took place in Dresden over a 2-year period. This is a catastrophe. And now, according to the United Nations, after you have 1.9 million people displaced from their homes, they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have medical equipment, they don't have fuel. What you are looking at is imminent starvation. Children are starving to death. So my view has been from the beginning, Israel has a right to respond to this horrific terrorist attack from Hamas. But you do not have a right to go to war against an entire people, women and children. And the United
Well, that's not what happened, and Bernie Sanders is a liar and a fraud on that. But the question is, now that this aid is going through, when the aid doesn't make it to the starving women and children, will Bernie Sanders say, hey, Hamas, cut it out? Nah. Will the Marxists say, hey, Hamas, feed the people? No. No, they won't. No, they won't. And I think they should be held to account for exactly this. And when they say, how do we get Hamas to stop? If they would ever say that, well, I would say, well, maybe Joe Biden should have been a stronger leader from the beginning, and therefore none of this would have happened. Now you say to me, but Tony, Hamas has always hated Israel. Well, yes, that's true. That's why Hamas exists. Hamas exists to destroy Israel and to kill all the Jews. So, by the way, does half of the staff at MSNBC and anybody who chants from the river to the sea. This is why they exist. This is who they are. This is what they do. And so I'm always amazed when I hear from the Biden team that somehow Joe Biden has kept us safe.
I will campaign for President Biden. I will certainly, because the stakes could not be higher for our country, for the world. The stakes are as high as they get, and as high as I've seen in the course of my public service. So I am going to campaign very happily because I think he's done a terrific job. He's shown experience. He's kept us from, having a complete breakout of uncontrolled war in many regions. But at the same time, he stood up for American values, global values, universal values, for America's obligations with respect to Ukraine, the Middle East, and elsewhere.
Joe Biden has kept us out of wars. In the 4 years of Donald Trump, there was no war. In the years of Joe Biden, you allowed American service members to die in Afghanistan because you didn't understand withdrawal. You left people to die. You had Russia invade Ukraine because you weren't strong enough. And you absolutely invited the opportunity for Iran to engage via Hamas and also Russia via Hamas and via the Houthi rebels. And sure as God made little green apples, as my dad would say, you will see before the election, as people, I'm not the first person to discuss this. I'm not saying I'm even giving an original thought here. But if Trump's the nominee, don't be surprised if China makes their move on Taiwan while they can. We are having a conversation about not being able to trust aid getting to the people who need it. Because Joe Biden is a large part of why we're in this position to begin with. Now, as I have stated before, I don't go back on my words. Mossad, Israel dropped the ball in understanding exactly how much Hamas was preparing. They didn't have a really understanding of the tunnel system. 350 miles worth of tunnels in Gaza. If you want to know where the food went, it went to feed all the people who were digging the tunnels. Let the children be damned. There are things where Israel dropped the ball, and they should be held to account. And there are places where the United States dropped the ball, and they should be held to account. Our intelligence agencies should be held to account. But nothing compares to the failures of Joe Biden. Nothing compares. So when you take a look at this aid package, which again, I hope the hostages get their medicine. What else could I want for them? And to be home. That if Joe Biden was actually engaged in the United States being a deterrent, as opposed to being weak, maybe we wouldn't be here. We talked earlier about the Houthi rebels. He took them off the terrorist list and then put them back on the terrorist list. The Houthi rebels are supported by Iran. So he took Iran off of a terrorist list? Who does this? Somebody who believes they're too smart for the room and doesn't actually understand the enemy and the threat. I hope this aid package works. I hope these people get fed, and I hope these hostages get their medicine. But I have no faith that it will. And this will continue to go on. And the pressure will come from Biden's team and these progressives to stop the fighting, and the Bernie Sanders commies of the world. We have to have a ceasefire. No, we have to have a cease Hamas, as in Hamas has to cease existing. Then we'll have peace. I don't even know how it could be seen as any other way. That's how the grown-up sees it. And for the Marxist who sees it as, well, why doesn't Israel stop existing? I say to you, as I've said many times, okay, let them fight it out. Israel's terrible and Gaza is terrible. Sure, kitten, whatever you say, let them fight it out. Let's see who wins. Oh, that's not fair because Israel has more tanks and more weaponry, more than. Well, maybe Gaza should have been focused on, I don't know, creating a society and engaging trade instead of living in a barbaric hellscape and an open air prison that they created and to which Hamas is the warden. Let them fight it out. If no side is right, let them fight it out. No rules. To the death. Let's see who wins. I'm Tony Katz. I will be right back, guys. Keep it here. Oh, my people. So I think we're getting better, starting to really get an understanding of what it is we're going for here. Certainly that my earpiece is showing. Oh, I got the haircut. Yesterday I was like, I need the haircut. And then today I got the haircut. I'm like, that's way too short. You didn't know me. Well, some of you did. When my hair was, I had hair down to my waist. I said I would find a photo. Oh, when I got married, ponytail, huge, all slicked back, Gordon Gekko style in the ponytail. I don't think I'm willing to do that much work again. So that's why I cut it. But this is, I mean, it looks good. And then you got the idea, like, is your hair thinning? Like, is that what's happening there? Or is it just like, you know what? It just, if you don't point it out, no one would even notice. It'd just be like, that's a bunch of hair. You think they noticed that's thinning there, producer Jason? Oh, they noticed that your hair is thinning. Yeah, but I was talking about me. Because it clearly is. But I don't care. I know people freak out about their hair. But if I went bald, I'm telling you, I'd be a piece of ass. Just point blank, I would be a hottie. Oh, me, just challenge accepted. You know what? I'll shave my head right now. I just couldn't imagine. I don't know what it would look like, but I wouldn't. Whatever, it is what it is. I can't get freaked out by that. But that's it. I'm just staring at it right now. So I got the haircut. Like, I think it's just a little short. And then, like, this thing is sticking out here. Like, why is that? That shouldn't do that. Am I leaving it too long? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Meanwhile, we got a lot to get to. So let's get to it, shall we? Thank you. So you have the new president of Argentina speaking at the World Economic Forum, and this is through the translator, and he's pretty clear. You commies stink. Oh, I played it from the wrong spot. I'm sorry. For a second there, maybe you couldn't hear it. Here it is.
Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Okay. Long live freedom, damn it. People were upset when he won, and he's the Trump of Argentina, and he's going to ruin everything. Too much government is a bad thing. And the last thing the World Economic Forum folk want to hear is that they're the problem. Because they are, of course, believers that they can engineer our better tomorrow. To that end, there is this woman from India speaking at the World Economic Forum, hospital group vice chair. And I clipped just some of it. I wanted you to hear her take on lockdowns. Listen. We're talking about COVID lockdowns, of course.
But more than anything else, I am a very proud Indian. And I think that the leadership, the quick decisions and the incisive decisions to do what we have to do at the right time, sometimes they're hard decisions, you face that. But I think to take the right decision, the hard decision, but to take a decision has been very important. And I think a population of 1.3 billion people, if we have been able to come out of this relatively, better than which could have been anticipated, and the fact that there was early intervention of vaccination, there was a lockdown. It was hard, but it was a decision making which I think helped us. So I think that's important going forward.
So is this a health official making the claim that lockdowns were good for us? Lockdowns were beneficial. Yeah, it was hard, but we needed to have that happen. You needed that. You're welcome. Understand that our issue, the issue for the freedom folk, the free and thinking people, the free folk, as they would say on the Game of Thrones, is that these other people are really convinced they know how we should live. Again, we go back to the radicalness of Rachel Maddow's authoritarian commentary, which you realize is just a whole big bunch of projection. Who's the authoritarian? The people cheering lockdowns or the people opposed to lockdowns? Who actually is the one here that wants to control your life? The people who believe that all cars should be electric? Or the people who believe that you should be allowed mobility as you see fit? Who is the authoritarian? The people who believe in a centralized digital currency controlled by governments? Or the people who believe in Bitcoin, a completely decentralized type of currency? It is remarkable to witness. So this talk from Milei, President Milei of Argentina. There's going to be a lot of pushback to that. Tremendous amount of pushback to that. Oh, he's so silly. Oh, he's so dangerous. That'll ramp up. I don't know what's so dangerous about, being opposed to the March of the Growing State. Was it dangerous when Dwight Eisenhower warned us in his farewell address about the military-industrial complex? I thought it was probably a good warning, something he saw as an issue, because it was an issue. Meanwhile, there is some scotch for sale, and let's discuss this Democratic switch thing. And did it actually help Nikki Haley place third? Find everything at TonyKatz.com. This is Tony Katz Today. This conversation, you've had it in your own life, and we've had it in multiple places, where we see that the agency class in the United States is not actually focused on what it is the agency is supposed to be doing. Rather, they're focused on everything else. If the CDC can then tell us that, well, guns are a threat to national security and safety, and so we have to do something about guns via the Centers for Disease Control, you realize that they believe they can do anything. And what we've created in the United States is this completely unaccountable group, this fourth branch of government, the agency class, that isn't responsible to us, that isn't accountable to us. They have a budget that is near unlimited. They say something, it has the full effect of law. It is a complete bypassing of Congress. Now, in a standard world, in a normal world, in a thinking world, what you would have is rules and regulations, thoughts and philosophies that actually make things better. But if, as Glenn points out in this piece that you can find over there at the New York Post, if we're engaged in mission creep, how does one focus on what the mission is? And if we're talking about the very critical things about safety and security, but instead the FBI wants to go about surveilling Trump supporters for 2024, or as Glenn points out, going after churches, then how could you possibly keep an eye on the person who wants to set the church on fire? We hear about this in the most immediate way. Of what value is the terror watch list when we see somebody commit an act of terrorism who was on the terror watch list? And the answer is there is no purpose to it. Who watches the watch list, and what happens to these people when something happens? No FBI member gets fired. No one on this organization gets fired, or in this agency gets fired. No one ever loses their job for it. No one ever suffers the consequences of their failure. But somehow we're supposed to be rest assured or feel secure because a watch list exists. We can only feel secure if the job is done. How Israel didn't do their job is beyond understanding. And if it's this idea of Mossad focused on these judicial reforms as opposed to the enemy, that's a whole nother conversation. Was Israel complacent? We've got a fence and we've got an Iron Dome. We're fine. No, the enemy doesn't think that. You get lulled into it. The enemy still hates you. This is a huge warning for the United States, and we should be very focused on it. All right, let's get back to this right here. We're still working the commercial side out, guys. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. And I was just learning that I got to get producer Jason on the radio side. He doesn't have his own computer. He needs his own computer. He needs his own station. So I got to figure that out. A lot of work to do. A lot of work to be done, including I got to figure out, and anybody who has technologically an understanding of this, how do I bring the radio into how we do the video? Because even like with everything I do, I have to put it into the system that we use, the streaming system. And that's how I'm able to share it. I can share it with the radio folk that way. But like if someone were to call, I can't share it with the video folk. There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to do it. All right, let's bring it back. $3 million for some Irish whiskey. I totally get it, people. I totally get it. Tony Katz today. It's a bottle of Emerald Isle. The old Emerald Isle. It sold for $2.8 million. A whiskey collector in the U.S. Purchased it, beat out the previous record by 100 grand. But it's not just the Irish whiskey. Now, by the way, Irish whiskey, there are not many rules in the creation of Irish whiskey, just like there aren't many rules in the creation of Scotch. Scotch has to come from Scotland. Irish whiskey comes from Ireland. But in both cases, the vast majority of them actually use bourbon barrels to do what they do. Bourbon has to be a first use charred oak barrel. So after it's made its barrel of bourbon, you can't make another barrel. You can use staves, which are pieces of wood. You can do other things with it. You can do a bunch of other things with it. But what you cannot do is use it again to create another barrel of bourbon. We've got serious rules. This Irish whiskey right here, this Irish whiskey also came with a Fabergé egg. Who doesn't love a good Fabergé egg? I ask you right there. Who doesn't love it? It came with 2 Cohiba cigars. So one would assume they are the legit Cuban kind, as opposed to the red dot or the black dot. It's completely not the same kind. They're not the same. I don't know. And the whole Cohiba thing, I get it. I get why people are into it. I get why people want them. It ain't what it used to be, children. Don't buy into it for a second. It is absolutely not what it used to be. The whole Cuban conversation. You don't need a Cuban cigar to have a good cigar anymore. Now, would I spend oh, by the way, this also came with a watch. It came with a decanter. Like that was you got for $2.8 million. Would I pay $2.8 million for a bottle of whiskey?
I love scotch. I love scotch. Scotchy, scotch, scotch. Here it goes down into my belly.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. If I had the 2.8 million, I would 100% do it. The problem is I would also drink it. I am not a collector. If you were to take a look at my bourbon collection, it's because people give me bottles to test and to try and to do. So I've got a lot of stuff. So I have a bottle of 2022? Was it 2023? The Old Forester birthday bourbon. It's probably about a $2,000 bottle. That's getting opened in April. Oh yeah, we're doing a live event. I said too much. Wait for it. I'll have news about that coming out in next month. It's gonna be pretty fantastic. I've got some Elmer T. Lee. I've got some incredible Willet bottles. You're supposed to drink it. You're supposed to drink it. There is no point in just looking at it. It's like a car. You're going to get a car just to stare at it? The whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's crazy town. Go out there and drive it. Enjoy the thing. So 2.8 million. Yes. Yes, I would spend it. No, I don't have it. And if it meant that I couldn't have a private plane, I absolutely wouldn't spend it because private plane comes first. I'm not spending $3 million on Irish whiskey until I have a private plane. And for the record, I would spend $3 million on bourbon or rye, not on Irish whiskey. I'm sorry. I have met very few Irish whiskeys that are good. Three. I think it's a 15-year from Redbreast. The Middleton. I can't remember the third right now. Yeah, it's just not my drink. A Nikki Haley story, because this happened to me yesterday, and this I wanted to get into whether or not we think that Democrats were changing registrations to support Nikki Haley, because Ron DeSantis is a big believer in this, and you've got all these people who switched registrations in Iowa in order to support Nikki Haley, and you won't be able to do that in New Hampshire. Well, true enough. The story goes that I'm sitting yesterday having a cigar, which is not a rare thing, and I get a text from a friend, and the text is, "Love this." I'm like, okay, what is it? Well, attached was a flyer, and I open it up, and it is a fundraiser in my beloved Indianapolis for Nikki Haley. Okay, fine. And she's going to zoom in. She's going to zoom in, and you're going to be able to talk to her. Well, all right, well, I guess that's the way it goes. She'll be on the road wherever it is. It's in February sometime. Cool. Well, I'm glad that the person who sends it to me loves it. And then I take a look at the host committee. So very often when there are these kinds of fundraisers for a candidate, there's a host committee, right? The people who are putting it together. So they're saying, hey, we invited you, all our friends, so you can write big checks. That's what it is. And I go through, I know some people on the host committee and some names I don't know. And then right there at the bottom of the first row for the host committee, Tony Katz. And I said, what? Because I know me, I'm not on a host committee. No one ever called me about a host committee. I have never been asked to be on a host committee. For a Nikki Haley fundraiser? What is my name doing on this flyer? I text someone I know who knows about the event, and I'm like, well, first thing I did is I actually called my home station in Indianapolis, WIBC. In Indiana, we're heard on WIBC, we're heard on WMUN in Muncie, we're heard on WGCL in Bloomington, and then we're heard weekends across the country, and then, of course, everything we do in the streaming. I call my program director, David Wood, and I'm like, hey, so this isn't a social call. This is a me calling my boss conversation, to which he's like, oh my gosh, Tony Katz is going to quit. And I'm like, Tony Katz is not going to quit. I just signed a new contract, but we should already talk about a raise. And I explain it because I think that when you're in my position, you're a radio host, that if you're engaged in primary stuff on a financial level, I think that's pretty weird. Only once have I gotten involved in an election where I was supportive of a candidate in the primary world. It's somebody I used to work with. And a friend, someone who's been in my home, I felt comfortable. But in the main, I don't do that. I'm like, I didn't do this. Someone's going to ask me about this flyer, and it's going to become a thing. So then I text somebody who is associated with this. I'm like, no one called me. No one talked to me about it. No one said word one to me. I can't be on this flyer. I can't be on this flyer. You gotta do me a favor. You gotta talk to somebody. Get me off the flyer. The text comes back like 6 minutes later. It's a different Tony Katz. Stop. There's another Tony Katz in the Indianapolis area. There are a few Tony Katzes out there. I know that to be true. And they're like, well, Katz is a pretty common name. Yes, Katz is a pretty common name. For Jews, it'd be like Smith. But Tony Katz is freaking rare as all get out. There are 9 of us. There aren't that many. There's another one. And I've been here almost a decade. No one thought to bring that up to me. No one thought to mention, hey, I know a Tony Katz. So I got to assume they're not playing me. And there's another Tony Katz. I feel so sorry for that dude. Like there's a Tony Katz who is he an environmental lawyer? I think he is. And when I get Google alerts for my name every now and then, he'll come up. Can you imagine how often I come up in his feed and all his stuff? Here he was building this fine career for himself, probably a gentleman and a half. And here I come, just ruining his whole day and his entire search history. Just a mess. But this Nikki Haley conversation gets us to this idea of whether or not Democrats voted in the Iowa caucuses by switching their party. Yes, indeed, it is true that you can do this at the Iowa caucuses with relative ease. It's a super easy thing to do. The question is, did it make some level of difference in the Iowa caucuses? First things first, don't forget that Nikki Haley came in third. She came in third place. So now we're making the argument that somehow, if people hadn't switched over, she'd be at what? She 19.1% was third place. So Trump was 51, DeSantis was 21.2, Haley is 19.1. So what? She would have been 14, 12? Is this your argument? Because that's a heck of an argument, right there. And she did underperform the polls. Just for clarity, she underperformed the polls. Did people come in and change their status, and they were Democrats so they could vote for Nikki Haley, so they could create some kind of chaos, right? We go back to the late, great Rush Limbaugh and Operation Chaos and those kinds of theories. I don't know. What I know is, from knowing Iowa and people in Iowa and getting answers to questions, this kind of thing happens all the time. There is nothing new under the sun. And absolutely, in past caucuses, people have come in and changed their registration and voted for a different party. Happens all the time. There is nothing right now that I have seen that shows me that there is credibility to this argument. What would show us is if in New Hampshire, she collapses. So taking a look at the polling right now, including the last poll that just took place, the Boston Globe Suffolk poll. Holy, let me get my glasses on here. Trump 50, Haley 34, DeSantis 5. Ron DeSantis is still trailing Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy. He's at 5.8 in the Real Clear Politics average. Christie is at 11 in the Real Clear Politics average. Ramaswamy at 6. In the average, it's Trump 44, Haley 31. That's a 13-point spread. 13-point spread. We've said from the beginning that Ron DeSantis has not made any move of any seriousness there in New Hampshire. So now And by the way, one of the interesting things is with Christie out and Ramaswamy out, but with Christie out, she went from 28 in the previous poll to 34. This is her highest. She's been at 32. She's been at 31. 34 is her highest in any poll. Those Christie voters did not go to Ron DeSantis. That much is obvious. We won't know whether or not there's any truth to this until we see New Hampshire. Does she underperform? She underperformed in Iowa based on the polling. And Trump was polling at 52.5 and got 51%. That's pretty dead on. So we will watch for this. Personally, I don't think there's anything to this idea that oh my gosh, look at all the people who went in for Haley and changed parties. I don't think there's much to it at all. But we'll find out in New Hampshire. Keep it here. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today. Guys, we will be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Keep it here. Guys, my people. All right. So tomorrow, we are gonna stream, but we're gonna come in late. Yeah, it's probably not gonna start till 1, because some things going on that I have to attend to. We think this might work. I think I need a couple other camera angles to break some things up. See, you know, I don't think I could do it right now. Could I do it right now? No, it'd be too tough to do it right now. So I think we need a couple other camera angles. I think we need some better commercials, right? Things to do in the breaks while we're waiting for radio. I think we might be onto it. I don't know. Wait to see the new studio. Oh, with the cigar smoke in the lounge. I'll bring people in. You know, I'll bring them in virtually or in real life. Be fine. I'd be cool with that. I don't know, but sometimes I don't want to talk to anybody else. People are like, how come you don't take calls? Because I'm the guy who doesn't take calls. It's just the way it is. It's totally my style. Don't forget to go to TonyKatz.com and be a part of what we're doing over there. And if you're watching on Rumble, subscribe on Rumble. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, Facebook sucks, and so does Mark Zuckerberg. Just want to make sure I said it properly, accurately. And then I got to get rid of this light. Look at that right there. Look at that, right? And oh, yeah. There. Come on, there it is. That's awesome. Not creepy at all. Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia who's not running for re-election, the guy who has the best name ID, had the best name ID in the world and ruined it because he's not lefty enough, thinks that Joe Biden has been pushed too far to the left.
Are you really going to try to get on the president's schedule and try to move him to the center before you make a decision on your next step?
Well, first of all, I think no matter who your president is, whether you're for him or against him, same party or not, you want your president to succeed. I think President Biden's been pushed too far to the left. I think he knows my feelings about that, and he should be coming back to the center or center left, which is where we make most of our decisions. It's where the economy is, and that's where the country is. There's not a successful person or family that makes any decisions from the extremes and thinks it's going to exist or last. So we're trying to bring it back. And that's if I get a chance and they want to meet, I'm happy to meet with them.
If you're not willing, Senator Manchin, to take on the squad, you have no chance in this. Joe Biden is just responding to the forces that are most dangerous within the party. And the extreme that is the squad is very much the mainstream when it comes to policy. It's the mainstream of who Democrats are. The Green New Deal, that's not pie in the sky. That's tame compared to where they're going to go next. Outward anti-Semitism, outward Marxism, outward hatred of their own nation, and the pushing of fracturing people. Joe Biden doesn't have a response to this because Joe Biden has no core. The people you got to go after are the squad. And that's why I am very focused on this idea when it comes to squad members and others, especially in the anti-Semitism front. I can't replace them with Republicans. Can I try and replace them with other Democrats? And I'm very serious about this subject. I think we should be running other Democrats against them and make them fight for their seats and hopefully lose. I'm Tony Katz. And with that, guys, we will call it a show is what we will do. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad you're a part of it. Be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, be sure to follow, be sure to do all the things if you're on X or anywhere you are. If you're on LinkedIn, I hope you enjoyed quite a bit. You can hire me for public speaking. We can talk about some of my other businesses as well. Feel free to reach out. Can't thank you enough for being a part of what we're doing here and what's going on here. And so we'll start tomorrow at 1:00. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to start tomorrow at 1:00. So hopefully that will all work out well, and I will catch you then, guys. Take care.